conservative, constitutional. It's the Andrew Cooperrider Show, keeping you informed on what's going on right here in Kentucky.
Today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, Kentucky senators pay no attention while the dark history of the child sexualization movement is laid out for them. And for all the talks of the DEI bills, we haven't seen one pass yet. We'll go over exactly why that is. Additionally, we see some Democrats walk out of a committee hearing. And then finally, I'll go over some little different takeaways from the State of the Union and Senator Katie Britt's response. Typically, I don't like to talk about national politics, but when I think I have something to say that I haven't heard anybody else say, I will occasionally interject. So at the end of today's show, I'll be covering that. But first, I want to let you know I will be speaking at the Lincoln County Republican Party meeting tomorrow night. It'll be at the Brontown Town Community Center at 6 p.m. in Crab Orchard. So I hope I can see you there. That once again, that's tomorrow night, 6 p.m. in Crab Orchard at the Brontown Town Community Center at 6 p.m. once again. As always, if you want to learn more about the show, head on over to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. So this past week, House Bill 207, the bill banning child sex dolls, came to the Senate floor for a vote where it passed 38-0 because, of course, it kind of had to after Senator Berg's comments on the bill in committee. Who could vote against it after getting that national backlash? Now, of course, you'll remember this from the comments made by Senator Berg where she called pedophiles maps. This was greatly covered. I've covered a lot on the show, so you can go back and Google that. Senator Berg calls pedophiles maps, and you'll see the video that I'm talking about. You can also check out last week's show, but if you want to hear some of that. But anyways, and she said that maybe letting pedophiles have these dolls is a good thing. It's a good idea. Well, Lindsay Tichenor gave an impassionate floor speech, and she is identifying not just the issue with the use of the word maps to describe pedophiles, but also what goes into the entire process of the sexualization of children. Let's take a listen to Tichenor's floor speech here. It's about 4 minutes long, but I do think it's extremely important.
I'm very supportive of this legislation. Unfortunately, what we have seen happening online with AI has led to children being victimized, being trafficked, their images being trafficked and exploited. And this is an important thing that I think we're going to have to deal with for a long time. I do want to bring a little bit of attention to the term that was used in committee. And I was just recently given the research that was referenced in that Judiciary Committee. And I found it astonishing that that research that referred to pedophiles as minor attracted persons comes from our federal government. That research was from the National Institute of Health. And if you want to take a little trip down history lane and the normalization of pedophilia, you don't have to look very far. It comes from the Kinsey Institute at Indiana University, which has been in place since 1947. And since that time, we have seen children being exploited because out of his research came the idea that children are sexual from birth. And how he came to that knowledge, that determination that was widely adopted across the United States in 1947 with the release of his book, Human Sexuality, Sexuality in the Human Male, shortly followed by Sexuality in the Human Female. That information came from pedophiles. The data came from pedophiles. The victims, some as young as 5 months old. Data was recorded by pedophiles in action. You can look up Rex King, who was referenced to protect his identity as Mr. Green in his book. recorded his actions. It was written down in Table 34, and children were abused. And scientifically recorded for 24 hours, and then reported back to Alfred Kinsey. And on that foundation came SECUS, which introduced sex education into our schools. Playboy, because Hugh Hefner said he wanted to be the pamphleteer for Alfred Kinsey. And it has infiltrated our society on the basis that children are sexual from birth. A horrific idea, one that was widely adopted. And now in our own federal government research, they're trying to normalize it and not call it what it is. I would encourage you to look up that research. They use the term minor attracted person. Not once in that research do they use the word pedophile. If that word has a stigma, it should have a stigma. As we all believe in this chamber, pedophilia is a disgusting act, one that we need to put a stop to any way that we can. I'm thankful to the House sponsor who brought this bill forward and hopeful that this will make a difference in bringing an end to this. Thank you.
So, of course, that was that was Senator Lindsay Tichenor's floor speech. Very passionate. Now, for those of you who couldn't see, there were two senators talking behind her about whatever, and that is Senator Elkins and Senator West, I do believe. And look, I understand there's a lot of talking that goes on the floor, and most of it really doesn't matter. A lot of the comments, I mean, for those of you who don't know, the decision on whether or not to pass bills is made most of the time before they ever even hit the floor, especially with Republicans having such a large caucus. They will get a good understanding of whether or not a bill will pass in their caucus meetings where they kind of have some votes on this before it gets out to the floor. So I understand you may not pay all the attention, but it's incredibly important to understand what she is talking about here. The whole idea of sexualizing children, that gender is malleable from birth, that we can give drugs and hormone therapy and chop body parts off kids, and that's all somehow okay. Not only that, but it's good. You know, the idea of having child pornography in schools like we see happening in school libraries all across the country. And that's the reason why I actually do take issue with Elkins and West chit-chatting. It really kind of bothers me. And I think it bothers me so much because this legislature is failing on so many levels to take the kinds of actions we need to stop these things from happening. We have two bills languishing in committees that would deal with the kinds of child pornography and issues we see inside our K through 12 schools. Because I mentioned there's awful books and horrible things that are in all kinds of schools across the country, including schools right here in Kentucky. I'll be going over a little bit more about what we're seeing in these schools, what we need to do, these bills that are just languishing in committee, and why these two senators chit-chatting while Lindsay Tichenor gave that very impassioned speech. It's just so bothersome and really points to a big part of the problem we see with our current legislature and how it operates. We'll have all that and more when we get back. Of course, you're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. Want to reach out to the show? Feel free to email info@theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's info@theandrewshow.com. Listen up, my fellow business owners. You need to get your cybersecurity and IT support under control. Reach out to the folks at Amston today. Call 859-300-0087 or visit amston.com. It is no secret that cyber attacks have become a constant threat, and you need to make sure that your organization is protected. Amston has over 30 years of experience working with businesses and governments alike. Call 859-300-0087 or visit AmstonAMPSTUN.com today. And you are back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. Before the break, I'd played for you Lindsay Tichenor, Cindy Tichenor's impassionate floor speech regarding a House bill to ban pedophiles from having access to computer-generated child images as well as child dolls for them to release with. A very troubling thing. And she went into where the history of that comes from and how awful it is. And really, we can trace back to the entire issues we're having right now as far as the over-sexualization of children, back to these very destructive ideologies that are grabbing hold and taking part even in our K through 12 schools. And we have bills languishing in committees that aims at removing some of this pornography within schools that is just sitting there. And that's why those two senators, Senator West and Senator Elkins, just chit-chatting, laughing, while she's giving this speech, really tracing it back. It really bothers me because they're not getting it. And it's obvious they didn't get it. I mean, last year they passed a half-hearted BS bill on trying to get pornography out of the schools that all it really did was set up a process for removal of material from schools. But the schools can still decide to go ahead and keep that material. Just like JCPS, Jefferson County Public Schools, they decided to keep some books in them anyways. I mean, right now in Jefferson County Public Schools, in middle schools, you can find books where a woman is wearing a sex toy and using it with another person, complete with illustrations. And a little bit of a child parental advisory here, but even things as graphic as women and how to explore yourself, illustrated in books in our middle schools. Books in our schools right now that have lists of pornography sites in them. And we try to get those removed, and we can't. And when we try to pass a bill to get them removed, we can't do it. And this makes it very clear why. Because these legislators, especially those in leadership, they have no understanding, or at least they just don't care how far back this push in financing goes to try to sexualize kids. And that's why these Republican senators laughing and snickering, they should take a moment to actually learn something. This is a very serious problem. And in their minds, we see a lot of these senators having this thought process that these types of issues are just culture war, mumbo jumbo. It's just a distraction from the important work of the legislature and blah, blah, blah. This is the important work. We have child suicide, child mental health, child abuse, all of that directly linked to this evil ideology. And what does our legislature do? Do they pass bills to ban kids at drag shows? Not yet. They passed a Senate bill last year, didn't make it through the process. They got a Senate bill moving again this year. Will it make it through the process? Who knows? They got to water it down just to get something to kind of move. Bills to get sexual books out of school libraries or even public libraries. They're just sitting there. Just sitting there. I mean, think about even the bills they talk about big. This year, they start off with a big push on DEI. And what's happening with that? Well, I'll tell you what. Not much as of right now. At the beginning of the session, and really December leading into the session, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, was at the top of the headlines. You probably see a bunch of news talking about it now. And DEI, of course, stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And just real quick, why are we against something that sounds great? Well, when you look at it in process, it's very racist. The Democrats gave up the KKK and picked up the DEI, apparently. To give you an idea of why it's racist and why it's bad for everybody, just to give you an example, let's say you think there isn't enough minority doctors, specifically black doctors. Because when you look at, of course, Asian and Indian, by that I mean migrant Indian, you see a high percentage Jewish, you see high percentage of those types of minorities are being in doctors outshining their percentages. But what they're talking about is specifically things like black doctors. They're like, well, you're not seeing enough black doctors. And so they bring in these DEI mandates and CEOs and leadership at these hospitals, they bring in these DEI mandates and they say, we need to get more black doctors. Well, it's not like the current policy is that we are to only hire white doctors. That's not it. The current policy is we need to hire the best and most qualified that we can for the money we have. But now you're saying, well, the entire department is racist because there's too many white people here, not enough minorities, or you're racist against black people. There's not enough black people in this department. But if you've just been hiring based upon who's best for the job, you now have to change that. You have to value something more than who's best for the job. You now have to value somebody based upon their skin color. And not only is it creating waste in the system because now we have DEI experts that have to be hired. That costs us things. Now we have to hire people. We're not getting the biggest bang for our buck. We can't. Because if you want to see a lawsuit, say, okay, fine, we're not hiring enough black people for this position, according to somebody, some expert tells us we're not. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we'll hire based upon skin color, but we're not getting the same value out of it because before we were hiring just the best, regardless of skin color. We changed that. Well, you can't pay them different because that's going to give you a lawsuit. So now you're paying the same amount you were before for less quality of talent because you're not prioritizing quality of talent. You're prioritizing skin color instead of saying, we just want the best and we don't care what they look like. And it also tells minorities that they somehow can't be held to the same standard as their white counterparts. They're too stupid or unskilled or unable to be, looked at on the same levels based upon the same criteria. And then when we see this nature of inclusion, we see this big programming push on the LGBTQ front, where it isn't just tolerance, but inclusion. And inclusion to them means when some deranged individual that swears they're a girl, even though they're clearly a dude with a beard, but the moment he calls himself a woman, well, DEI teaches you the inclusive thing to do here is to call him or her because, it's inclusive. And becomes a mind virus that infects and grabs control, especially of kids and younger adults. Because, when we say that, if somebody's different, they need to be treated special attention, special training classes just for them. We have to teach everybody how to address them because they're special. Well, kids love to feel special. They have a big desire to get attention and feel special. And what else causes more attention and to feel special than to make an entire class have to learn about what offends a person or not? It's the ultimate attention grabber. So recognizing that this danger is out there because these DEI pushes, this big push on mental health, what are we seeing? We're seeing higher child suicide rate, higher mental health issues, higher discomfort. We see more issues between races in the country. There's more racial division than ever. These are big problems, destroying our country. And so recognizing the danger and a big social push, the legislature in Kentucky decided, well, we're going to put forward a few anti-DEI bills. And one bill being the teaching of DEI in colleges, another defunds DEI college offices in colleges, and then finally another bans the teaching of DEI in K through 12 schools. Now, what is going on with those bills? Going back to my first segment, it just appears they don't really care about the damage being done. They don't care that they're trying to shape the worldview of K through 12 early on, because when we look at those bills, what we see is there's only one bill moving. It's passed out of the Senate. It's over in the House. The House got it on February 14th, Senate Bill 6, but it didn't get assigned to a committee finally until just this past week on the 7th. We'll go over why here in a bit. But they're not moving the K through 12 bill an inch, even though K through 12 education is the one that we're forcing people into. Kids can't opt out of going to K through 12. Now, you could homeschool or private school, but also, too, half of our budget is going to funding education, specifically K through 12. And so rather than dealing with this government indoctrination in K through 12, where it's a bigger problem, and if you think it isn't, let's just look at the stats here. When we look at colleges and universities, we see right around about 17% of college kids are identifying as LGBTQ, a massive amount more than the prior generation. But when we look at high school kids, we see 25%. They don't need to worry about getting a hold of them in college if they can get a hold of them in K through 12. And yet our legislature is dragging their feet on it. Why? Why do they slow walk the most important legislation that actually deals with the threats of our time, the thing that will destroy America, the destruction of meritocracy, the destruction of capitalism, the destruction of procreative values based upon raising happy, healthy, and productive children? Children that go on to become the next generation that maintain the American way of life. They're slow walking it because they know it's important. But it's about who's it important to. It's not important to them. It's important to those they have the least amount of control over. They will wait till the last moment to pass that legislation. Why? Because they want to leverage getting that legislation through in order to make these individuals, these true conservatives, vote for pieces of legislation that leadership thinks is important, like their budget. That's why their budget's taking so long. Arguably one of the, if not the most important piece of legislation they need to get done, one they've had 2 years to prep for, and yet it's being slow-walked. They will wait to the last second. They'll wait to the last second because they want to force these legislators to vote yes on paying off whatever campaign donors they need to pay off that get paid off through our budget, through our tax dollars. And they'll leverage the future of our kids. And it's truly evil. It's one of the most evil things in the world. I mean, who cares if a few kids commit suicide, right? Who cares if a few kids have deteriorating mental health? Who cares if America gets destroyed? As long as the donors giving money to the committees and caucuses and PACs that I have control over keep giving and get their will done, well, then I can continue having power. And that's the most important thing to them. Well, coming up after this, we'll be talking about House Bill 467 committee hearing. You're listening to The Andrew Cooperrider Show.
Lexington Overstock Warehouse is Central Kentucky's best source for stylish new home furnishings. Don't pay retail. With our low overhead operating structure and big name brands, we offer the absolute best values on new furniture for every room. Shop online anytime at LexingtonOverstockWarehouse.com or visit our weekends only showroom located at 156 West Tiverton Way. Right now, for listeners of this show, we're offering a special discount for our online customers. Use coupon code FREEDOM for an additional 10% off your online order today. Lexington Overstock Warehouse, low overhead equals really low prices.
And you are back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. House Bill 467 had a committee hearing this past week in the Kentucky legislature, and Democrat reps Rourke, Burke, and Camule walked out of the meeting in protest. They said, "We hate House Bill 467 so much, we must walk out." Here's just a quick look at what that looked like.
Abigail Brown on Zoom. You could just introduce yourself for the record, and I see former Representative Adia Wishner is here with you. So please introduce yourselves and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
So you'd think with that kind of response that House Bill 467 must be just awful, right? Maybe lowering the punishment for sex offenders or allowing murderers to go through diversion rather than prison or taking away someone's constitutional rights. You'd be wrong, though, because what House Bill 467 does is it requires hospitals, doctors, birthing centers, freestanding birthing centers, midwives to make referrals for parents whose child in the womb has been diagnosed with an issue that puts the long-term survival of the baby before or after birth in questions. It requires that they then get referred. So when a parent's child in the womb has been diagnosed with this, that they then get referred to a program that can help with things like counseling, medical outcomes, mental health resources, give you the best possible medical outcome, of course, mental health resources, after birth care, all this litany of services that parents in that position needs. And so it requires them to give the referral, and that's important aspect because it then has and allows and mandates that medical insurance cover that care. Seems like a pretty important thing. It seems like something Democrats shouldn't have an issue with. I mean, you've got Democrats who find a bill that would get insurance coverage for services of parents, for parents of children whose outcomes have been thrown into question, children in the womb. And they find it so appalling and gross that it requires them to make a spectacle of themselves walking out of the hearing. Why is that? Well, they're so committed to the idea of abortion that any kind of care for children and a parent in this situation that doesn't end in abortion, doesn't end in murdering the kid in the womb, no matter its chances of survival. If that isn't what you're offering them, then they can't support it. That's how committed they are to child murder. I mean, even if you're not pro-life, you can still support things like counseling, medical options, care to parents, mental health resources, going through a very hard moment. But according to them, that's not possible. Here's what, and it's not me putting words in their mouth. Here's what they said to reporters out in the hallway after they walked out about why they left.
Will you go back in and vote on it?
We're not going to vote on this bill. We'll vote on the rest of the committee.
Is the biggest issue with the bill that it doesn't cover people who decide to end their pregnancies early? Is that the biggest concern there?
Well, there are several concerns. One of the big concerns is that it specifically calls out women who are choosing to terminate a pregnancy and discourages that in the preamble whereas language. But it also includes things about fetal personhood, and that is a bridge too far. Alabama has taken dangerous steps, and as a person who's benefited from IVF services, I don't want to see Kentucky go down that path. So I think we have a duty today to step up, step out, and refresh the narrative out here.
Representative Tate has kind of framed this bill as a potential alternative to exceptions to the abortion ban for women who are facing really difficult pregnancies. I'm wondering what
I would say that as it stands, it's currently available. Everything in her bill is available to suffering parents. If she had talked to bereaved parents, she would know that if you experience something like this, the hospital offers you services just like what she's proposed. So really, she's not giving us anything new. She's just taking away from what we already have. The exceptions, I don't want to comment on that. This is not an alternative to exceptions. And frankly, this is really not good enough. It's an insult to grieving parents everywhere.
Absolutely, completely ridiculous. I mean, to sum it up, what they said is that it wasn't the bill itself. I mean, they literally said that's not so much the bill itself that really bothered them. It's the preamble and the purpose and the people behind it, because they're trying to encourage a woman to carry a child with unknown viability. Even if there's a 1% chance the kid can make it, they say, nope, we want it to be 0% chance. Remember this moment from the hearing on the baby Olivia video bill that was last week, where Planned Parenthood came out against the video saying they were making lies in it because they said a child with a lot of medical help has survived outside the womb at 20 weeks before. Take a listen to what Planned Parenthood said, just to remind you. Take a listen.
Around 20 weeks, with a lot of help, babies have survived outside the womb.
Finally, at the end of the video, it claims that at 20 weeks, a fetus can survive outside of the womb. The facts are clear. Only 1 in 10 babies born at 22 weeks survive to go home. And that's only after months of intensive care. At 24 weeks, the likelihood of survival increases only to 68%.
Only a 68% chance. Now, of course, if you're somebody like me, it really doesn't matter if it's a 1%, 10% chance, 68% chance. This isn't like some sort of surgery on your knee or spinal surgery where you can either be in a wheelchair or undergo a surgery that gives you a 68% chance of survival, but if successful, you can walk. It's not like that's the discussion we're having. This is death or a 1% chance. I mean, which would you rather have? A 0% chance of living or a 1% chance of living? Even less. Let's say you could either die and have a 1 in a million chance of making it. Well, that's not much of a choice, is it? Of course, because we would make the decision to go ahead and say, look, I'm just going to take my chances. I'm going to want to go ahead and live. But to the left and to these abortion fanatics, they can't think of it that way. I mean, remember what that Planned Parenthood person just said. Only a 68% chance of survival. So we should just kill it. Wow, you've only got a 68% chance of living. Let's just end it. Because here's the dirty little fact that they don't want to say. There has been many a times where children that have been diagnosed and parents have been told that these children in their womb, they're not going to make it past birth. Or if they do, they won't make it long outside the womb. Or they've even been told that a child inside their womb is no longer viable, that they should terminate the pregnancy. But then parents went ahead and carried through with the pregnancy anyways. And that child ended up going home and living a full life. This isn't just a one-off story. It's happened many times. And getting this type of care for parents should be something we all agree with. But the Democrats have gone so far off the deep end on this murder cult thing that they can't agree on that. They think it's a good argument to say, at 24 weeks, a fetus only has a 68% chance of survival outside the womb, so we should just kill it. And they say that because they say that's a good argument. But they don't hear themselves because they don't actually value life. Unless, of course, it's their own. In that case, they'll mandate you do all kinds of things to make their life more fulfilled. They'll mandate you use the right pronouns. They'll mandate you take a vaccine that doesn't work. They'll mandate you wear masks that don't work. They'll mandate thing after thing after the thing they can to you in order to make you do things that they think fulfill their life. But when it comes to anybody else's life, they couldn't care. Well, you're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. Want to reach out to the show? Go ahead and email info@theandrewshow.com. Coming up after this, I'll be giving you a little bit of my takes on the State of the Union, as well as Senator Katie Britt's speech. All of that after this short break. 859 Print has local service and low prices. I personally have done tons of business with them. And I can tell you, whether it is getting things printed off, sending direct mail, making business cards, buying TV ad time, digital marketing, they can do it all. And as a special for listeners of this show, they're offering 10% off any and all print services using code RIDER2024. That is code RIDER 2024 for 10% off. Check out 859 Print. You'll be glad you did. And you're back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. This past week, last Thursday, there was the State of the Union address. And for those of you who didn't see it, I'm happy for you. I wish I was you. But I didn't have that luxury. No, actually, in fact, I was engaged in a X-Twitter space. For those of you who don't know, it doesn't really matter, where me and several others were kind of doing a live react to the State of the Union address. And of course, as far as a State of the Union address goes and the night goes, it kind of really did perfectly encapsulate the state of our union. It started off with a bunch of pro-Hamas protesters blocking the road, none of them really getting arrested or in trouble for doing so. And that blocked President Biden's motorcade. So you had a bunch of leftists running their mind off or running their mouth off and blocking and just, being a bother to everybody else and protesting by blocking streets, and nobody gets punished for it and causes Joe Biden to be late to the State of the Union. Of course, they wouldn't call that an insurrection. Biden shows up, and then for the next several minutes, he, in a drug-induced fervor, does a angry man rant where he continues to demonize and attack everybody that doesn't agree with him as awful, horrible, no good, Hitlerian figures and bad people that are stupid. But during this speech, a gentleman who's the father of a Gold Star father, who's the father of a Marine that was killed at Abbey Gate in Afghanistan during the withdrawal, he started yelling out in protest, saying, Marines, Abbey Gate, to try to say, like, hey, what about your horrible withdrawal? And he was then removed from the chamber and arrested. So it makes a lot of sense. Those who agree with Biden get no consequences for being a lot more destructive to the State of the Union. A guy yells for a few seconds. He gets charged with a crime because he's a political opponent of Biden. So that all makes sense, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard about that. Now, one thing you probably haven't heard about, unless you follow me on social media, and if you're on Twitter, I'm at KY Cooperrider. On Facebook, just search Andrew Cooperrider, you'll find me. And, YouTube, of course, you can find me there if you just search KY Cooperrider. Rumble as well. But unless you follow me on social media, you probably didn't see this, and that was Bernie Sanders. So remember I said I was doing a live react to the State of the Union. While I was watching the State of the Union on this live react, on this group kind of call with like 4,000 people on it, I pointed out that Bernie Sanders was sitting in the chamber, and he was holding a blue medical face mask, you know, the kind. And he was rubbing the inside of it with his hands. He was like fidgeting with it. So he's holding the mask and rubbing his hands. Keep in mind, hands he probably just shook as he walked into the building, and rubbing the insides of it with his hands. Now, this was before he would think the cameras would be on him. This was before Joe Biden walked down the aisle, before the State of the Union address started. Later on, and I called it out at the time, I said, watch Bernie Sanders. Let me know if anybody sees him put on that mask, because right now he's got his greasy, grimy fingers rubbing the inside of it, and there's no reason for that. Well, later on, during the Joe Biden speech, you can see that he did, in fact, put on that mask. He's sitting in the same place. He didn't move. He's surrounded by the same people, and yet, when he knew that cameras would be panning and it was time to make a political statement, he threw on a face mask. To which I say, can we end this fear theater already? It's been well proven that especially these types of masks don't do much when it comes to the defense of COVID. On top of that, when somebody is rubbing their hands on the inside of it, hands that just shook many people's hands, and then slapping it onto their face, that's probably not the most healthiest thing to do. In fact, it's worse than not wearing a mask at all by a long shot, I'd say, because now you're breathing in all these germs from your hands that probably you wouldn't normally have near your mouth. But on top of that, it's clearly performative, and it's ridiculous. And it's just trying to push this sense of control. And it goes back to what I've been kind of talking about this entire show, about the destruction of our culture, of our America. Because it's a bygone era of COVID, and Bernie Sanders wishes for it back because it was ushering in the same socialist agenda he agrees with. So he continues to engage in the fear theater, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. So that's the first point I want to call out. I don't think anybody else was. Here's the second point. I want to talk about Senator Katie Britt's speech. Senator Katie Britt is from Alabama, and she is a white suburban mom that's also happens to be a federal senator. And she gave this speech that was, well, quite honestly, unless you're a white suburban woman listening to this show, and if you are, you're probably also still not the person it was for. See, it wasn't for you, okay? It wasn't for the pretty much decided Republican voter. I would assume if you're listening to this show, unless you're a leftist that just really hangs on to every word I say so you can go off later and hate blog about it. I would assume you're somebody who's probably already decided that you're voting for Donald Trump and you're pretty in there. But there are undecided voters out there, undecided high propensity voters. And the place where Trump does the worst with undecided high propensity voters is actually white suburban women, specifically in that middle age, just like Katie Britt. That's who that speech was for. Now, I'm not going to pretend like the political geniuses made her do the thing she ended up doing. I don't think they necessarily thought that far ahead. But in fact, this speech, I believe, is more effective for completely different reasons than people want to talk about. You've probably heard that her tone was weird and she was like sitting in her kitchen. And I get it. It maybe seemed odd. She wasn't actually in her kitchen, though. She's actually at her kitchen table. The angling was just not super great. She clearly had an open concept kitchen, with her dining room table being apart like half, and then of course her kitchen the other half. It's a pretty common layout. That's the layout in my house. I've got like an open kitchen into the dining area. I'm sure a lot of your house is pretty similar where it kind of flows in. And so she was just sitting at her kitchen table, but the angling made it appear like she was in the kitchen. Additionally, like I said, her tonation was very breathless, very earnest. Definitely, a little over the top, a little overacty, of course. But for most suburban swing voting women, the women that high propensity voters that Trump is trying to win over, they're not going to watch that entire speech. They will see the clips, perhaps, that the media and other places play over and over again. They will read the articles about this speech that are going through mainstream media, and the mainstream media couldn't help themselves. And this is why I say that speech maybe was genius, Because what they're doing is they're attacking Katie Britt for being, quote unquote, in the kitchen. They're attacking her for her tonation, that her tone was too whatever. And for the white suburban women, they look at that and they say, I spend time in the kitchen. I mean, even Democrats don't want to admit this, but even the liberal, high-class liberals, middle-class conservatives, upper-class conservatives, generally speaking, even though they may, especially the liberals, attack traditional values, they do live traditional lifestyles. A man and a woman married, they have children. A lot of times they go to private schools because they don't actually trust public schools. A lot of times, of course, they're living in nicer neighborhoods that have been overcome with crime as well. And so that they don't actually agree with a lot of things they say. They do live completely different lifestyles. They do live a conservative-based lifestyle. And so because of that and natural gender roles, people naturally kind of gravitate to them. As much as you hate it, as much as feminists want to attack it, people do gravitate towards these natural gender roles. And these gender roles include women doing the cooking while men do work outside. That's just a natural gender role that a lot of these people gravitate to. And so they look at those attacks on Katie Britt. And suddenly they don't see a party that's for the suburban white woman when they're seeing those attacks. What they're seeing is a party who actually hates them. And it's really, I think, flipping the script here because, of course, they're told, well, Trump's mean and everything else. He's mean to people. He makes fun of people. That's why I don't want to vote for him. But what if the other party is mean and makes fun of you, the suburban white woman, if that's who you are? What if they poke fun at your lifestyle? Now it's not just about attacking others. It's about attacking you. Who are you going to be pushed to vote to? And that's why, while I agreed the Katie Britt speech could have been better overall, I think actually the leftist attacks on them, on the senator's speech, is actually doing more to help Trump than a well-executed speech by Senator Katie Britt ever could. And perhaps that's why she's on the short list for vice president, according to Raw's news alerts on Twitter. Well, y'all, that's what we have time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. I thank you all so much for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow. Audio-only format, though, so listen to it on WZXI or on all major podcasting platforms. Comes out Monday through Friday. Till then, we'll be seeing you.